Hello and welcome. This is Microsoft Flight Simulator and this is the Phoenix Airbus A320. And in today's episode we are sort of carrying on where we finished last time. In the last video we talked about diversions. I explained to you that from my point of view there are basically two kinds of diversions. We spoke about them and I explained how we deal with them in the cockpit. However, I also told you about a flight that I had some time ago where all these skills were really tested to the limit. A lot of things went wrong that night, but a lot of things went really well. So I thought it'd be a good example to tell you how sometimes things really don't work out as you expect, how to deal with it, how to be flexible, and how to make the best out of a very complex situation. And this is what we're going to discuss in this video. I'm gonna take you exactly through the flight that I experienced that night, and I will tell you exactly what happened, how we dealt with it, and how it all ended. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so let's set the scene. This happened in 2023 during the winter time. It was actually just before Christmas. I was together with the same crew on a 5-day rotation. This means we left at our home base. We're hopping across Europe for 5 days, sleeping in hotels. And then after 5 days you usually end up back at your home base. This was towards the end of our rotation, and on that particular day we started off in Dusseldorf, and our roster told us that that day we had to fly Dusseldorf, Vienna, Vienna, Dusseldorf, Dusseldorf, Vienna, Vienna, Dusseldorf. We basically call this a double Vienna. The weather forecast wasn't actually too bad. It was very cold, -5, -8 degrees. There was some light snow, but nothing really to worry about. Because of this, on every single sector we had to de-ice, anti-ice the aircraft. This usually takes quite some time, especially if all the aircrafts have to do it. And so as a result, throughout the day we built up quite a long delay. This thing happened on the very last sector of the day, so we were in Vienna, we were getting ready to fly back to Dusseldorf. The weather was unchanged, as you can see. It was nighttime, it was getting late, quite cold, and some light snowfall. So once again we had to inform the airport that we would require anti-icing, de-icing, and we asked them to prepare everything for the procedure. The forecast for the rest of the day was actually really nice. It was low cloud, just some light snow, but really nothing to worry about. However, because we knew that there was a long queue for de-icing, we decided to take some extra fuel. Plus, just in case the snowfall turned out to be a bit more than just light, we also took some extra fuel because of that. I think if I remember correctly, we ended up with something like 40-45 minutes of extra fuel on top of what the company had calculated. My company also takes some extra fuel into account. So we felt quite comfortable with the fuel we had on board. We got everything ready, all passengers were boarded, and once everything was done, we finally started to make our way back to Dusseldorf. Pushback, engine startup, and the de-icing were without anything of note. In fact, when we arrived at the de-icing pad, we were the only aircraft there, so we went straight in, got the aircraft de-iced, anti-iced, and made our way out to the runway. Takeoff was from runway 29, and even though the snowfall had increased a little bit, there was nothing really to write home about. Uneventful takeoff followed by an uneventful climb out. As we climb out here over the city of Vienna, I would like to very quickly mention something, and that is a system called ACAS. ACAS is something that we use constantly on every single flight. It allows us to communicate with our company can communicate with us, Also, it allows us to get weather from any airport at any time across the world. All we have to do is type in the identifier of the airport. This can be a whole list of airports if we want to, just doesn't have to be one by one. And the aircraft will print out all the weather and forecast reports for those airports. So we get ATIS, we get communication with the company, we can communicate with other aircraft, we can even communicate with airports, letting them know what time we arrive, if there's anything we need in terms of a wheelchair service, or we can even order fuel already for the next flight. So as you can see, this is a tool we use a lot on every single flight, and this tool will shortly become very important. About 10 minutes into the flight, we received an ACAS message from our company, and it simply read, "Frankfurt Airport closed due to snow." Now, obviously we're not flying to Frankfurt, we're flying to Dusseldorf, but this of course has a huge impact on what's happening around us. Frankfurt is one of the busiest airports in Europe, by far the busiest in Germany. So a lot of aircraft will now have to divert. The main diversion airport for Frankfurt is Munich, but Munich is also quite busy and there's only so many flights they can accept. The third busiest airport in Germany is Dusseldorf, our destination. It's a fairly big airport and it can accept any aircraft, including A380s. So at this point we discussed that we would probably expect some delay on the arrival, maybe some holds, some vectoring, and therefore we were quite happy that we had all this extra fuel. Another 10 or so minutes later, we received yet another message from our company. This time the message read, "Amsterdam Airport, only one runway available due to snow." Now this now started to ring some alarm bells. First of all, there was no forecast for heavy snow anywhere on any of our weather reports. And secondly, Amsterdam is right next to Dusseldorf. Amsterdam is a big airport, and if it is limited to just one runway, that would mean a lot of aircraft would have to divert, and obviously the closest airport for them is Dusseldorf, just across the border. So again, we discussed delays. We got the weather from Dusseldorf and our alternate Cologne. At that point in time, they still reported light snow, and they reported some snow showers in the vicinity, but the airports themselves were absolutely fine. So we expected some delay on the arrival, but nothing unusual apart from that. As we were getting closer to our destination and our top of descent, ATC advised us that we should reduce our speed to close to minimum clean. Now this usually happens when the airport is either super full or the entire airspace simply is at capacity, and it's basically ATC's way of saying they just don't know what to do with you right now. So just fly slow, and once you're there we'll figure something out. Essentially that's what that means. As we were descending Dusseldorf, the frequency was very busy with a lot of aircraft. Obviously we expected this. And also, as expected, we received some delay vectors, so we had to fly around a bit, and they slowly but surely got us down to a lower and lower altitude until we were finally on the downwind for runway 05 right. We were already below 10,000 feet and getting ready for the approach when all of a sudden there was an announcement on the frequency by air traffic control, and the announcement was, "Dusseldorf Airport is closed due to snow." Now, of course, as you can imagine, lots of pilots would ask, so how long is this gonna last? But there was no information at this moment in time. All we were told was that the airport is closed and that we would all state our intentions. Now for us, we decided to simply go to Cologne. Cologne is very close to Dusseldorf. It's another big base of my company. It's got a long runway, and so we told ATC we would like to Cologne. We received the radar vectors directly to Cologne. As you can see here, Cologne is behind us. So all we had to do is perform a left turn towards Cologne. Once we were established on the heading, we simply went to secondary flight plan, copy active. We chose a point, it didn't matter which one. We put in our new destination, which is Cologne. Put that in here. Once we had Cologne in as our destination, we selected the arrival. So we were told the arrival would be 3 to right and ILS. So we put that in. There wouldn't be any stars. We just get radar vectors to go there. Once the secondary was done, we went to secondary performance, went to the arrival page and put in the up-to-date weather. So this is already set up here. As you can see, the only thing missing is the minimum. The minimum on that runway is 500 feet. And with all that done, all we have to do now is activate secondary. And that has already the approach into Cologne in the flight plan. And all we have to do is follow radar vectors now to fly to Cologne. Very soon we were on the downwind for the runway. We were again descending back down to below 10,000 feet. We got the latest weather from Cologne, and Cologne weather looked okay. Light snowfall once again, a bit cold, -5 degrees, and a low cloud base, but everything within limits. And at this point something else happened. We received a warning from the aircraft that our ACAS system would no longer function. I don't know exactly which system failed that day, but we were no longer able to communicate with our company or get any weather reports from any airports anywhere. Now at this point this was annoying, but we thought, well, we have the latest weather from Cologne, it's fine, we're gonna land there now and then we'll report it to maintenance. Cologne does have a maintenance base, so we were quite confident that they would be able to fix this problem. We were just getting ready for the approach, descending down to something like flight level 80, maybe flight level 70, slowing down for the ILS, when all of a sudden ATC informed us that Cologne Airport is closed due to heavy snowfall. And at this point, as you can probably imagine, the frequencies went a bit crazy because there were tons and tons of aircraft in the air and nobody knew where to go, what to do. This included some long-haul aircraft that had already been flying for a very long time. There were triples, A380s, some aircraft from the US. Everybody was just circling around, and all the major airports in this area now were either closed or just too busy to accept any other aircraft. So at this point it became quite stressful in the cockpit, also because we had no ACAS. We had no possibility to actually get any weather reports from other airports. The only option we had was to open all the charts, write down the 80s frequencies and listen in to the 80s and write everything down. Of course this limits you because you can only listen to 80s frequencies of airports that are fairly close by, and it's very time consuming, and yeah, it was a bit of a mess. The workload was very high. ATC wanted to know what we were going to do. Fuel was still not a huge issue, but by now we were thinking, well, you know, at some point we really should be landing somewhere. So we requested a climb. We went to somewhere like flight level 150. They gave us the climb and told us, please let us know what you would like to do. Now, one of the advantages we had was that we were quite familiar with German airspace. Neither of us are from Germany or were from Germany, but we have over the years operated extensively in out of German airports, not just the big ones, but airports all over Germany. So we decided to take a look at an airport that was a bit more obscure, that maybe not that many other pilots would look at, and see if we would be able to land there. And that airport was Munster Osnabrück, called Echo Delta Delta Golf. Not too far away. It has a longish runway. It's a small airport, but we both have operated in and out of there, so we were familiar with the airport, and we decided to have a look if maybe the weather would be okay there. As it turned out, the weather was okay, at least at that moment in time. So once again, secondary flight plan, we did copy active, then we changed our destination to Echo Delta Delta Golf, and the arrival on that night was the ILS on runway 25. No star, that's it. We can already activate the secondary, and yeah, we basically requested radar vectors to the ILS for runway 25 in Munster. We requested a higher altitude to save some fuel, but as you can probably imagine, the frequency was crazy busy. It was almost impossible to talk to anyone. There were so many aircraft in the air trying to figure out what to do, where to go. So yeah, it was quite stressful. Also, of course, we had to speak to our cabin crew, we had to inform the passengers, and yeah, there was a lot of workload involved. We had to prepare everything for the arrival and landing in Munster, including a briefing, landing calculation, etc., etc. And so eventually we started our final approach into Munster Airport. And in case you're wondering, I can tell you, yes, we did land. We managed to land the aircraft finally at an airport. But of course, as is usually the case, that was not the end of the story. Whilst Munster is a very good airport in this particular situation because the weather was good, the runway is long enough, it is a seasonal airport, so we only operate flights in and out of there in the summer month. In the winter month, I believe practically no one is flying to this airport. So we were expected some problems with the airport because we understood that there would only be a skeleton staff. But the thing was, we were not the only aircraft that would be flying there. There were 6 other aircraft on approach with us into this airport. And what happened was, once those aircraft had landed, the airport actually had to close down because they couldn't accept any more aircraft apart from the ones that were already on the ground. So this of course caused another problem. And so we ended up at a remote stand in Munster. Now, as you can probably imagine, the airport was not prepared for such an influx of flights. They managed to organize one single stair that they attached to our front door. And yeah, we were told that basically there was one single guy that could operate the fuel truck, and he would go from aircraft to aircraft, and once he would arrive, we would have to tell him how much fuel we wanted. Also, there is no baggage handling at the airport, so anything in terms of bags has to stay on board. Now, as is often the case, some passengers wanted to leave the aircraft. They would argue that they actually live not far from Munster, but we had to explain to them this was only possible if they didn't have any luggage checked in. If they would have had luggage checked in, then we were unable to allow them to leave the aircraft. So again, a lot of discussions back and forth. Then the fuel truck showed up and asked us how much fuel we wanted. At this point we had no idea whether we would be leaving this airport, whether we would be going anywhere. So just as a precaution, we asked him to fill the aircraft to just below max landing weight, as this would give us the widest range of possibilities. So as you can imagine, there was a lot of stuff going on. To bring the story to an end, we almost ran out of time because our legal time for that day was coming to a close. Dusseldorf managed to open one of the runways and only one single exit of the runway and one single taxiway, and they started to allow aircraft to land again. Because we were very close to running out of time, the airport was kind enough to give us priority. So after a while on the ground, I honestly can't remember how long, it may be an hour, 1.5 hours on the ground with passengers, we were able to take off again, do the short flight to Dusseldorf. We were told on short funnels that there's only one exit for the runway available, and that we would have to meet that exit, as otherwise the runway would be blocked by us. We used a single taxiway available to get to our stand. Again, buses, everything were delayed because of all the snow, so it turned out to be a very long night. If I remember correctly, we got back to the hotel at something like 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. in the morning. So why am I telling you all of this? Well, in the last episode we talked about diversions, and it looked probably fairly straightforward. There are two kinds. Yes, and the second kind we discussed, the workload was a bit higher, but as you can see, sometimes things just take unexpected turns, and this is when you really have to work together as a crew. I have to say the crew that night was amazing. My colleague in the cockpit and I were busy, but it was always calm, quiet, collected. The cabin crew did an amazing job as well, keeping passengers happy. We didn't have any complaints that night from anyone. So despite all the circumstances, it turned out to be a pretty good flight and a pretty good exercise to a certain extent for everyone. So this is what happens once in a while. I won't forget this flight in a while, because there was just so much stuff going on and so much workload in the cockpit. But at the end of the day, I'm glad that these things happen, because it gives you a good level of expertise and some very good experience, and at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. And with that, I would like to bring this video to an end. I hope you found it interesting. I hope you gained some insight in how sometimes things have to be handled. And yeah, maybe we can discuss some more things like this in the future. I don't know if you're interested in that. I have had some more flights that were extraordinary, so to speak, so maybe we can discuss those in the future. In any case, thank you very much for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Until then, all the best. Bye bye.